After the Second World War ended in 1945, much of the world lay in ruins, but two nations emerged stronger than all others, the United States and the Soviet Union. Though they had fought as allies against Nazi Germany, their victory revealed deep and lasting differences. The United States believed in democracy, free markets, and individual liberty. The Soviet Union promoted communism, centralized control, and one-party rule. These opposing visions for the future would shape global politics for nearly half a century in what became known as the Cold War. The Cold War was not a traditional war fought with constant battles between armies. Instead, it was a prolonged struggle for influence, power, and ideology, fought through politics, military alliances, economic pressure, espionage, and the constant threat of nuclear destruction. At its core was fear that one system would dominate the world and eliminate the other. For the United States, the concern was the spread of communism beyond Eastern Europe. For the Soviet Union, the fear was encirclement and destruction by capitalist powers. In the late 1940s, Europe became the first major battleground of this new conflict. As countries struggled to rebuild after the war, the United States launched the Marshall Plan, offering billions of dollars in aid to Western European nations to stabilize their economies and prevent communist movements from gaining support. The Soviet Union rejected this aid and pressured Eastern European countries to do the same. Soon, Europe was divided into two opposing blocs, symbolized most clearly by the Iron Curtain stretching across the continent. Germany became the most visible symbol of this division. In 1949, the country was split into West Germany, aligned with the United States and its allies, and East Germany, controlled by the Soviet Union. Berlin, though located deep in East German territory, was also divided. When the Soviets blockaded West Berlin in 1948, the United States responded with a massive airlift, supplying the city for nearly a year. It was an early test of resolve, and America did not back down. As tensions grew, both sides formed military alliances. In 1949, the United States and its allies created NATO, a collective defense pact designed to deter Soviet aggression. The Soviet Union responded in 1955 with the Warsaw Pact. The world was now split into two heavily armed camps, each preparing for a war they hoped would never come. The most dangerous aspect of the Cold War was nuclear weapons. The United States had used atomic bombs to end World War II, but by 1949 the Soviet Union had developed its own. Soon, both nations began building hydrogen bombs, far more powerful than anything used before. By the 1950s and 1960s, the United States and the Soviet Union possessed enough nuclear weapons to destroy each other many times over. This balance of terror became known as mutually assured destruction. The idea was simple and terrifying. If one side launched a nuclear attack, the other would respond, and both would be annihilated. Rather than fight each other directly, the superpowers competed through proxy wars. In Korea, after World War II, the peninsula was divided between a communist North and a Western-backed South. When North Korea invaded the South in 1950, the United States led a United Nations force to defend it. The Soviet Union and China supported the North. After 3 years of brutal fighting, mounting casualties, and public opposition at home, the U.S. withdrew in 1973. 2 years later, South Vietnam fell. The war deeply divided American society and changed how the nation viewed military intervention. By the 1970s, both superpowers recognized that constant tension was unsustainable. A period known as détente began, marked by arms control agreements and improved communication. The United States and the Soviet Union signed treaties to limit nuclear weapons and reduce the risk of accidental war. Yet rivalry remained, and mistrust never fully disappeared. In the 1980s, tensions rose again. The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan and renewed arms buildup reignited Cold War fears. At the same time, internal problems were weakening the Soviet system. Its economy struggled and public dissatisfaction grew. When Mikhail Gorbachev came to power in 1985, he introduced reforms aimed at openness and restructuring. He reduced censorship, eased tensions with the West, and pulled Soviet forces out of Afghanistan. The symbolic end of the Cold War came in 1989 with the fall of the Berlin Wall. For decades, the wall had divided families, cities, and ideologies. When it finally came down, it signaled the collapse of communist control in Eastern Europe. 2 years later, in 1991, the Soviet Union itself dissolved. The Cold War was over. For the United States, the Cold War reshaped its role in the world. It emerged as the dominant global power, with military alliances spanning continents and influence reaching nearly every region. At home, the conflict transformed politics, technology, education, and culture. The fear of nuclear war faded, but the legacy of the Cold War continues to shape international relations today. The Cold War was not just a battle between two nations. It was a global struggle that defined an era, driven by ideology, fear, and ambition. Though it ended without a final shot fired between the superpowers, its consequences still echo through the modern world.